Morning Woodward Show. We got a special guest joining us Thursdays with John McElroy, the Doc, publisher of All Lions, and does great work. He's always at Allen Park. He's working hard, and he's with us. He's blessed us with his presence. Welcome to the show, John. Thanks for joining us. I want to ask you first, before we get into all the other stuff, because there are some storylines I want to get to. First, your reaction off of this past Sunday, what the Lions did, what Jared Goff did, no run game first half, essentially no run game second half, and that man had a hell of a performance earning NFC Offensive Player of the Week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what have you guys been talking about just before I came on? You want to see Jared Goff help this football team win games, and he was able to do that even without David Montgomery. I thought when he went down, I thought that was going to make the day a lot more challenging. But guess what? Jared Goff had a performance in that first half and throughout the game that was really stellar, and I think opened a lot more people's eyes regarding just how valuable he is to this football team. And if he plays at that level, now we're talking about a lot more elevated goals, not just winning the division, but winning multiple playoff games. So it was a big game on the road against a team that was scheming against a team with a solid defense that was scheming to stop your offense. And to play at that level, crisp, and to launch one to JMO, I think put a lot of people in a great mood looking at and evaluating Jared Goff and his future here in Detroit.
All right, John, so this is obviously going into Baltimore, probably one of the tougher matchups on paper for the Detroit Lions. What is something that the Ravens can do that could potentially give the Lions some trouble? I feel like I ask you this question every week, but I think it's always relevant.
It's very relevant, and I think it kind of ties into the talk about Jared Goff and paying him all this money. The Ravens get after the quarterback. They are a team that has multiple players that can get to the quarterback. I was just watching film before I hopped on, and I was like, oh, my goodness. Jared Goff is going to be, the offensive line this week is going to have to step up, play a little bit better than they did against Tampa Bay, because while the Tampa Bay defense is not as good, while the Baltimore defense is stellar, their offense is not as great. So I think that if the Lions offensive line can block for Jared Goff, now you got a quarterback that can do things, because any quarterback in this league that gets pressured, they don't like it. And especially Jared Goff, because basically he's a sitting duck. So if the Ravens get after it and they dial up their blitzes and they dial up a lot of pressure and the offensive line does not play as well, there's going to be an issue. And that's the big thing in the playoffs. When you get to the postseason, you're going to face amazing defenses, and you're going to face a pressure that is really, really tough to overcome. So for Jared Goff, he passed a great test against Tampa Bay. Now the next one on the road again against Baltimore, I think is going to be another great opportunity to see where Jared Goff's at. And I think he's going to play well. But, man, that Baltimore defense, they're going to get after it.
And John, too, with the whole Jahmyr Gibbs thing, because, John, that's why I love you, because you were in the chat, you were giving your opinion on the Jahmyr Gibbs. You know how I feel, but I want to ask you at least an update on Jahmyr, if he's going to be available, what's his workload going to look like? I know the Lions, they brought in Mo Ibrahim back to the practice squad, but what should we expect out of Jahmyr? Because if he's healthy, to me, John, I know he's got a lingering injury, and I don't know the extent of it, but this should be a game where Jahmyr gets a more heavy workload, is it not?
Man, what was wild was Wednesday was a walkthrough, and we get the injury report at 4 o'clock, and guess whose name's on there? Craig Reynolds. He's dealing with a hamstring and a toe situation. So you look at it and you go, man, the Lions running back situation has some problems, has some issues. But it was good to see. Dan Campbell did say that he felt a lot better about Jahmyr Gibbs being able to play this week. But guys, here's the thing, and here's the tough part. You hope, first and foremost, that Craig Reynolds is healthy, because you need a running back to carry the bulk of the load. And that's what David Montgomery was brought here to do. Jahmyr Gibbs was not going to play this year and be a guy that was going to get 20 carries a game. What was talked about with Jahmyr Gibbs was being a complimentary back, a change of pace back like an Alvin Kamara, who can get the ball in space and create. Well, that hasn't happened yet. And he's kind of experiencing what happens to rookies, learning that he's not the fastest player on the field. An average linebacker can catch up with him. The speed of the NFL does take time to get used to. And if you guys go to games, you see just how fast space closes. You think there's a 2-yard window. 1 second later, boom, the guy's on you. So Jahmyr Gibbs has to learn to follow and trust what the coaching staff tells him so that he's able to execute at a higher level. And what the Lions have kind of showed is they take time with their players that are younger. And I don't think that you want to give them 15 to 20 carries, but what Jahmyr Gibbs does got to be he does got to be utilized a lot more in space. We got to see what he was brought here to do. Obviously, I think that he can be a weapon. He can be a part of this offense. But guys, you saw it. Jared Goff is spreading the football to 10 different dudes. So while I know everybody that plays fantasy, that wants to see Jahmyr Gibbs light it up, I think you just got to ease him in there steadily, get him out there in space and screen passes and a couple of change of pace runs. But I think if Craig Reynolds is healthy, you give him the bulk of the carries, see what he's about, and keep it moving forward. And I'll be interested to see who they call up again this week, if it's Ozigbo or if it's Mohamed Ibrahim. So it'll be interesting to see. But Jahmyr Gibbs, you guys can't run him into the ground. Right now, he's still a rookie that's learning his way through, and I don't think you're putting him in the best position to succeed by throwing him out there and making him the number one running back.
So, is this, when it comes to this Lions team, we already know that going into Tampa Bay and winning was a big win. I think it gave some people who were even a little bit on the fence about this team being a Super Bowl contender. They watched them play that game and were very, very impressed. What happens if they actually go into Baltimore, despite all of the injuries that they've suffered, and maybe having to see a heavy dose of a guy like Craig Reynolds at running back? How high and how far can this team actually go?
Yeah, it's a great time, guys. First and foremost, I wake up today and what do I see? I see J-Mo at Little Caesars Arena, and his reaction from a football player was great. He's like, look at that. They scored a goal with nobody in net. He seemed excited, and he seemed to be in awe of what was going on. Seeing J-Mo hit the horn lit up the morning for me. It was great to see. Look, right now, Lions have taken over the country. People are talking about this 5-1 football team, especially when you see the massive block that Craig Reynolds threw. I talked to Tracy Walker about his booming hit against Chris Godwin, and you see a football team that I think that if they have a really good chance to defeat the Ravens. I think that they are a gritty football team, the Lions themselves, and I hope to see more of the Blue Sea out there at Baltimore. This team, guys, when you have a quarterback playing at the level of Jared Goff, you have an offensive line that's now ranked number 1 by PFF. You got a defensive line that's scary, led by Aiden Hutchinson, and an interior with Aleem McNeil and Isaiah Buggs, and a violent secondary that wants to lay the lumber on people. When you have those kind of pieces, and I think that there's a mindset that they truly believe it's Detroit versus everybody. When you have that mindset of, look what everybody thought about us in 2021. Look at the collection of talent. A lot of cast-offs, a lot of players on that roster that, like a Josh Reynolds, who people thought, oh, Josh Reynolds, you're just a number 2 or number 3 receiver. You know, maybe you're just a guy that's a role player who some radio hosts just want to talk trash about. They look at that and they say, no, we can contribute. We can play at a very high level, and Josh Reynolds can be a guy that every time he touches the football, it's a first down or a touchdown. They can be a collection of guys that can come together where the entire whole is bigger than the sum of its parts. And I realized, man, this is a good football team. And if they can get to 6-1, now maybe you put another wrinkle, another valuable tape out there for Brad Holmes to maybe want to add more to this football team. So these next 2 games are huge, especially with the trade deadline looming.
And Lucas here, happy to have you back on the show. The ball knower, talking to another ball knower, of course. Looking at this Ravens offense, Lamar Jackson, the Lions obviously have struggled against mobile quarterbacks in the past. Now they have Justice Hill, Gus Edwards. I don't think they're going to have any trouble handling them, but then you kind of look. Mark Andrews, Lions kind of struggle against tight ends. Zay Flowers, a very explosive rookie who can do things after the catch, so if you miss a tackle, he can make you pay. And even a guy like Odell Beckham, a veteran. Who do you think needs to step up for this Lions defense in order for them to kind of contain Baltimore's offense and come out of there with the W?
Yeah, it's great. Dan Campbell was asked, how tough is it going to be to stop Lamar Jackson? First and foremost, you got to contain. You got to keep Lamar Jackson in that pocket. He is passing a little bit more, but he's still a 1,000-yard runner potentially, still a guy that's very athletic that can wreck a defense. So it's obviously, I think it's going to be key for those linebackers, Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone, to continue to play at a high level. When you look at what the Lions have been able to do, Alex Anzalone's having a career year, flying around, breaking up plays. Really, I think what has happened is once he got his contract, he got more comfortable that, hey, I can be more comfortable to fly around to the football. I can play in coverage. I can be around and be somebody that can stop the football, run towards the quarterback. And I think that the pairing with Derek Barnes has really been something to look at. And when you watch the film, you realize, oh my goodness, they set the tone for the defense. Outside of the linebackers, man, I want to see continued great play from Cam Sutton and Jerry Jacobs. I think the duo combined is really doing a lot of good things in regards to, okay, if they give up reception, they're tackling at a high level and not allowing significant amount of yards after the catch. So I look to the linebackers this week to have a solid performance and maybe even a breakout performance this week by Jack Campbell.
Thanks so much, John, for joining the show. Again, you guys can catch John. He's the publisher of All Lions and, of course, the host of the Detroit Sports Podcast. It will be Thursdays with John McAroon, a very valued member of the Morning Woodward Show program. Appreciate you, Doc, for joining, and good luck this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. Good luck to you battling Darren McCarty. I know Darren, and I love the fact that you have your opinion regarding role players. But look, I'll say this. A lot of role players can definitely rise up and make plays, and they will this week. Look for an unsung hero maybe to even make another play for the Lions in their win over the Ravens. Khalif Raymond, Sam Laporta doing their thing. Role players, while they don't get all the headlines, they make the engine purr, baby. And just because Darren McCarty wasn't a guy that lit up the stat sheet, don't discount what he valued, what he brought to the Red Wings. That was a heartbeat guy. And listen, grind line. Go watch the tape of what they brought to the Red Wings, and you'll see why they won 4 cups, baby.
I mean, that's 100% fair and all. I only want to hear to you. I only want to hear from you, John McAroon, and to you, Vitriolic Carnage. He can only be referred to from now on as Super Bowl champion Kadarius Toney.
Oh my God!
He had a big punt return to set him up set up a 3-yard touchdown drive. So,
John, he heard role player. You mentioned role player for this Sunday, and he started tripping out. You know?